The world was waking up to war. Not the kind fought on land or sea, not even in the skies, but far above, in the cold dark of space. The silence that had ruled the stars for so long had been broken, and what came after was fire. Governments scrambled. Leaders argued. Some wanted peace. Others wanted revenge. But most just wanted to survive. In Washington, General Elizabeth Parker stood in a war room filled with blinking lights and tired faces. She was not a politician, but now she had to speak, like one. A video call connected her to leaders across the world. Moscow, Beijing, London, New Delhi, Pretoria, Brasilia. All were watching, all were waiting. "We don't know who they are," she said. "We don't know why they're here. But we do know this. They're moving fast. They're targeting our outposts. And if we don't act now, Earth will be next." Across the world, cities braced for panic. But something strange happened. People didn't run. They stood their ground. In the days that followed, factories reopened. Old ships once thought lost were pulled from storage. Engineers worked around the clock. Scientists studied the alien signal, trying to understand it. Soldiers returned to duty. Pilots trained for space combat like never before. It wasn't just governments anymore. It was everyone. On Mars, a small colony of miners and researchers joined together. They weren't soldiers, but they knew how to build things. They started working on defense systems, using mining lasers and old rover parts to make weapons. On Luna Theta, Lieutenant Aaron Price watched the chaos unfold. He wasn't surprised, he'd seen it before. How people changed when the enemy was at the door. He got his orders soon after. "Prepare for war." That was all it said. He read it twice. Then he nodded. Back on Earth, Captain Lisa Harper was called, back into service. Once she had been one of the best pilots in the sky. Then an accident left her grounded. Now with war coming, they needed every pilot they could find. She sat in a training room looking at young recruits who barely looked old enough to drive. They were scared. She could see it in their eyes. But she also saw something else. Fire. Determination. They didn't know what they were getting into, but they were ready to try. "I'm not going to lie to you," she told them. "This isn't like flying over the ocean or dropping behind enemy lines. Out there, there's no air, no second chances. If your ship dies, so do you." She paused, then smiled. "But we have something they don't." One of the recruits asked, "What's that?" She looked each of them in the eye. "We fight for home." Meanwhile, in orbit, the USS Concordia was being prepped for launch. It was an old ship built during the early days of deep space exploration. Most of its systems were outdated, but now it was being refitted with new weapons, better shields, and faster engines. Inside the engine bay, Ensign Daniel Reyes worked alongside engineers from 3 different countries. None of them spoke the same language perfectly, but they didn't need to. Every bolt, every wire, every test, they all meant the same thing: survival. Reyes wiped sweat from his brow. He was young, maybe too young for the job, but he was good, with machines. Always had been. His father used to fix cars in their garage back in Texas. He learned by watching, by doing. Now he was helping to build something bigger than any car, something that might save the world. Outside, the sky was still dark. But inside, lights burned bright. Across the planet, the same thing was happening. In every city, in every lab, in every base, people were preparing. For the first time in history, Earth was not divided by borders or flags. It was united by fear, by anger, by purpose. And somewhere, far beyond Jupiter, the alien dreadnoughts kept moving, silent, cold, unstoppable, but not for long, because Earth had finally woken up, and it was ready to fight. The first strike came without warning. One moment, Mars Station was sending routine reports. The next, it was gone. Just silence. No explosion, no signal, just nothing. Then it happened again. Europa Base, Saturn Relay, Luna Theta's outer, sensors. One by one, Earth's outposts blinked out like stars being snuffed out. The alien dreadnoughts moved like ghosts. Fast, silent, deadly. Back on Earth, General Elizabeth Parker stood in front of a map showing all the lost stations. Red, dots marked where humans had once been. Now they were just empty space. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she turned to her officers. "We need boots in space," she said. "Now." On Luna Theta, Lieutenant Aaron Price stared at the sky. He wasn't looking at the moon or the stars. He was watching the dark spots where their sensors used to be. "They're not just attacking," he muttered. "They're mapping us." He turned to his team. "They're learning our positions, our tech, our weaknesses." A young officer asked, "What do we do?" Price didn't answer right away. He wasn't a scientist or a general. He was a soldier. But he knew what had to happen. We stop hiding. And so, Earth fought back. Not with speeches or plans, but with fire. Captain Lisa Harper led the first real counterattack. She flew a small fighter squad through the wreckage of a destroyed relay station. Her mission, draw enemy fire and survive long enough to learn how the aliens fought. It was suicide, but they did it anyway. As soon as they got close, the dreadnoughts responded. Beams of light cut through the dark. Missiles launched from nowhere. Explosions bloomed silently in space. Harper's wingman took a direct hit. His ship vanished in a flash. She clenched her teeth. "Stay tight," she shouted over comms. "We've got one shot at this." They dove low, flying between debris fields. The enemy couldn't track them well in the junk. It gave them a chance. Harper lined up her shot, target locked. She fired. Missiles screamed forward. A direct hit lit up the screen. One of the alien ships flickered. Not much. Not even a real win, but it proved something. The aliens could bleed. Back on Earth, Ensign Daniel Reyes worked non-stop. He was still aboard the USS Concordia, helping refit the ship for war. Every hour counted. Every bolt mattered. He wasn't a fighter. He didn't know how to fly a fighter jet, let alone a space fighter. But he understood machines, and machines could be made better. "I think I can boost the shield strength," he told the chief engineer. "How?" the older man asked. Reyes pointed at a damaged fusion core. "We reroute power from the engines, temporarily. It'll drain speed, but give us more protection during jumps." The engineer looked at him like he was crazy. "You want to steal power from the engine while we're moving through space?" Reyes nodded. "It's risky," he admitted. "But if we don't try something new, we're just targets." That night, they tested it. The Concordia jumped. Space folded around them. For a brief second, everything went white. Then they landed. Right, where they wanted. Shields held. Engines survived. They had done something the aliens hadn't expected. They had adapted. News spread fast. Across Earth, people watched live feeds from orbit. They saw footage of fighters dodging death, of ships firing weapons into the void, of brave men and women risking everything. Fear was still there. Panic, too. But now, there was something else. Hope. In Washington, General Parker met with the president. The world was watching. Every country was waiting. "We can't win this with fear," she said. "We have to show them we won't go quietly." The president nodded. "What do you suggest?" Parker smiled. "A message." A short time later, every satellite still active sent out a single transmission. It wasn't a surrender, it wasn't a plea, it was a promise. "This is Earth. We are not afraid. We will fight. We will win. And we will protect our home." Across the planet, people heard those words, and for the first time since the silence broke, Earth spoke with one voice, and somewhere far beyond Jupiter, the dreadnoughts paused. Just for a moment, as if they had heard something unexpected, something they had never heard before. The sky was always dark now, not because of clouds or storms, but because Earth had grown quiet. The world still turned, cities still lit up at night, and people still went to work, raised kids and argued over coffee. But space was silent. For years, maybe even decades, scientists had been listening. Radio dishes pointed out into the void, scanning for voices that never came. Every once in a while, someone would get excited about a strange signal or a weird reading from Mars Station, but it always turned out to be nothing, just noise, static, the cold wind of empty space. Some people thought we were alone. Others believed something was out there, watching, waiting. But not many cared anymore. Life on Earth was hard enough. There were new colonies on the Moon and Mars, yes, but they were small, struggling places. Most people didn't care about them unless something went wrong. Then, one night, something did go wrong. It started with a flash, a bright light near Jupiter, not a star going supernova. Those were known, mapped, understood. This was different. It moved. Fast. And then another. And another. On the surface of the Moon, in a base called Luna Theta, Lieutenant Aaron Price sat in front of a screen and stared at the data coming in. His job was simple: monitor deep space traffic, make sure no asteroids were heading toward Earth, and keep an eye out for anything unusual. This was unusual. "You seeing this?" he asked the room. No one answered. They were all frozen, looking at their own screens, eyes wide. The objects were moving faster than any human-made ship could. They weren't broadcasting. No ID tags, no comms. Just movement. And direction. They were heading for Earth. Within minutes, alarms began to blare, not just in Luna Theta, but across the solar system. Orbital stations, research labs, military, command centers, all lighting up with red warnings. Unknown contact inbound. Multiple targets, high speed, no identification. On Earth, governments scrambled. Some thought it was a test gone wrong. Others thought it might be a new tech demo from China or Russia. But those countries denied it. Everyone denied it. In Washington, inside a secure bunker under the Colorado mountains, General Elizabeth Parker stood in front of a large screen showing the same data being seen by Aaron Price. She was older, her hair gray, her face lined with years of war and worry. She had fought in the U-Asian conflict, survived 2 drone strikes, and helped rebuild the UNSC Space Command after the big asteroid scare of 2047. She knew what this wasn't. It wasn't a drill, it wasn't a mistake, and it wasn't human. "Bring me visual," she said, voice calm. Moments later, the screen changed. Grainy footage from a satellite near Jupiter showed the first object clearly. It was massive, black, angular, looked like it was built more like a weapon than a ship. "My God," someone whispered. Parker's jaw tightened. "Get me the president." Back on Luna Theta, Aaron Price was pacing. He wasn't a scientist, he wasn't a diplomat. He was a soldier. Ex-Marine, now stuck behind a desk in lunar defense. He'd signed up thinking he'd be protecting mining rigs and supply ships. Not preparing for alien invasion. He opened a secure channel to Earth Command. "Price to Earth Control, do we have orders?" Static, then a voice. "Stand by, Luna Theta. Repeat, stand by." He hated that phrase. Stand by. Wait. Watch. React. But he couldn't help but look again at the screen. More lights were appearing. Dozens. Now hundreds. They were spreading out. Not just heading toward Earth. Toward everything. Mars Station. Europa Base. Saturn Relay. All targets. "This isn't a visit," he muttered. It was a strike. Back on Earth, the president addressed the world. Millions. Watched online, on TV, on phones. The message was short. "We are not alone." That's when the panic started. In New York, people ran through the streets. In Tokyo, schools shut down. In Cairo, riots broke out near government buildings. Everywhere, people tried to understand what was happening. And then silence. The satellites closest to the alien fleet stopped sending data. Then they stopped responding altogether. One by one, until only one signal remained. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't a greeting. It was a burst of code. Raw, fast, impossible to translate. But one thing was clear. It was a warning. Earth had been silent for too long. Now, something else had come to speak. And it was not here to listen. Daniel Reyes floated in his seat, heart pounding. The USS Concordia had jumped farther than any human ship ever had. The Titan drive worked. That was the good news. The bad news? They were not alone. Outside the viewports, the stars looked wrong, twisted, like they were watching. The ship hung in silence, surrounded by wreckage. Big ships, broken, dead. Some looked alien. Others were different. Not human, but not like the dreadnoughts either. Carla Moore sat at the main console, eyes scanning lines of data. "We're out of range of Earth," she said. "Longer than expected." Reyes swallowed hard. "How far?" She didn't answer right away. Then quietly, "We don't know where we are." Across the bridge, Commander Marcus Bell stood near the pilot's seat. He wasn't surprised. He had expected this mission to go deep, but not this deep. He turned to the crew. "We came here for answers," he said. "So let's find them." Back on Earth, Captain Lisa Harper trained hard. Her mission was coming soon. She would lead a small team into enemy space. Their job, follow the dreadnought's path and find their command center. But before that, she needed to be ready. She flew simulations every day, shot down drones, practiced evasive maneuvers. Every time she landed, her hands shook from stress. But she kept going. On Luna Theta, Lieutenant Aaron Price oversaw the buildup of Earth's new defense line. Bases were being built fast. Ships were being refitted. Fighters lined up in hangars like rows of teeth. Jake Miller, the young recruit, walked beside him one night after training. "Sir," he said, "do you think we can win this?" Price looked. "At the sky, I don't know," he admitted. "But I do know this, we can't stop trying." Jake nodded. "Then what do we do next?" Price smiled. "We fight harder." Meanwhile, aboard the Concordia, Daniel Reyes and a small team suited up for an EVA, extravehicular activity. They were going outside the ship to examine a nearby wreck. It was risky, no comms beyond short range, no way of knowing if anything inside was still alive. But they had to try. As Reyes stepped onto the hull of the alien ship, he felt cold even through his suit. This thing was huge, longer than a city block, black metal, burned holes along the sides. It had fought something and lost. Inside, the team moved slowly. Lights flickered, wires dangled. The air was gone, but the smell remained. Burnt plastic, metal, death. Moore scanned a console. "This tech isn't like the dreadnoughts," she said. "Different design, different energy source." Reyes looked around. "You think these guys fought them?" he asked. "Looks like it," she said. "And they lost. They found a storage drive, small, still active. They took it back to the Concordia. When they powered it up, the screen blinked to life, not in English, not in any known language, but there were images. Ships, fleets, a massive station orbiting a gas giant, and then a symbol, a red eye, split in two. Bell saw it first. "That's not just a logo," he said. "That's a warning." Moore zoomed in. "This station," she said. "It might be the command node, the place controlling the dreadnoughts." Reyes looked at Bell. "If we hit it," he said, "maybe we can stop them." Bell nodded slowly. "Maybe." Back on Earth, General Elizabeth Parker watched the same footage. Her face was unreadable. When the video ended, she turned to the president. "We have a target," she said. "Now we need a plan." In Washington, war rooms lit up again. Maps changed. New routes were drawn. The Concordia sent coordinates, data, everything they had. Lisa Harper got the call. "You're cleared for launch," the voice said. She closed her eyes, then opened them. "Yes, sir." On Luna Theta, Aaron Price stood on the observation deck. He looked at the stars, at the darkness. For the first time, he didn't feel fear. He felt purpose. Because now, Earth knew who they were fighting. And, more importantly, how to strike back. Commander Marcus Bell sat alone in his office aboard the USS Concordia. The lights were dim. Outside the window, stars burned cold and far away. He stared at a report on his desk. It had taken weeks to write, longer to believe. The truth was simple now. They were at war, not just defending Earth, but fighting back. The first victories had been small. Captain Lisa Harper's fighter squad surviving an ambush, Lieutenant Aaron Price leading a defense team on Luna Theta, Ensign Daniel Reyes boosting shield strength during a jump, but they added up. Still, it wasn't enough. The aliens were too fast, too smart. They learned from every mistake, and they kept coming. Bell knew Earth couldn't win this with old ships and borrowed weapons. If they wanted to survive, they needed something new, something bold. He made the call. Begin Project Titan. Across Earth and space, engineers, scientists, and soldiers dropped what they were doing. For years, Project Titan had been locked away, labeled too risky, too dangerous, a last resort plan that no one wanted to use. Now there was no other choice. In the orbit above Mars, Daniel Reyes stood inside the main lab of the Concordia. Around him, people worked fast. Blueprints covered every wall. Holograms showed designs for engines, weapons, and ships unlike anything built before. He looked at the screen showing the Titan drive schematic. It was based on alien tech, reverse-engineered from a piece of wreckage found near Jupiter. No one fully understood how it worked, but if it did, it could change everything. Reyes turned to the lead engineer, a woman named Carla Moore. "Can we make it work?" he asked. She didn't look up from her console. "We can try," she said. "That doesn't mean we'll live to see it," he nodded. "That's all we've got right now." On Luna Theta, Aaron Price trained new recruits. The base had become a forward command post. Ships landed daily. Supplies arrived hourly. Soldiers came from every nation, wearing different uniforms but carrying the same fear and the same fire. Price walked through the training yard. Young men and women ran drills, practiced combat, learned how to fight in zero gravity. One of them, a kid named Jake Miller, approached him after class. "Sir," he said, "what happens if we lose?" Price looked at him. "You don't get to think like that. But what if we do?" Price stepped closer. "Then we die trying. That's the only thing we control." Jake swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." Price gave him a nod. "Good. Now run 10 laps." Back on Earth, Captain Lisa Harper sat in a briefing room in Washington. She was tired. Her hands shook a little from stress and lack of sleep. Across the table, General Elizabeth Parker watched her closely. "You led the first successful strike," Parker said. "You're a symbol now." Lisa didn't like that word. "I'm a pilot," she said. "Not a poster." Parker smiled. "Sometimes you are both." She handed over a file. "This is our next move." Lisa opened it, her eyes widened. "They want us to go behind enemy lines?" Parker nodded. "They want you to fly into deep space, find out where the dreadnoughts are coming from, what controls them, who or what is giving the orders." Lisa closed the file. "When do we leave?" Parker leaned back. "You have 72 hours. Meanwhile, on the Concordia, the Titan drive test began. Daniel Reyes stood in the engine room as power surged through the ship. Lights flickered, alarms beeped, engineers shouted commands. Carla Moore checked the readings. "Energy levels rising," she said. "We're good so far." Reyes held his breath. "Engage the drive." A low hum filled the air. Then silence. Then reality bent, stars stretched, space twisted, and in a flash, they were gone. No explosion, no warning, just movement. When the crew opened their eyes, they weren't where they started. They were light years away, floating near a dead star system. Wrecked ships floated in the dark. Some were alien, some were not. Reyes looked at the screen. "What the hell is this place?" Moore whispered. "We just jumped farther than any human ever has." Reyes felt a chill. They had done it. Project Titan worked. But now they were alone, far from home, and surrounded by ghosts. The message spread fast. "We found the enemy's command center. It was real, and we were going to hit it hard." Across Earth and space, people stopped what they were doing when the news came through. The dreadnoughts weren't just floating around. They were being controlled from a massive station orbiting a gas giant far beyond known space. Destroy that station, and we might finally win. But getting there, that was the problem. Back on Luna Theta, Lieutenant Aaron Price stood on the observation deck looking at the stars. He had been training soldiers non-stop for weeks. Now he felt like time was slipping away. Jake Miller walked up beside him. "They're really going through with it?" the young recruit asked. Price nodded. "They are." Miller swallowed hard. "And we're not going with them?" Price gave him a small smile. "We've got our own job," he said. "Keep Earth safe while they make the strike." Meanwhile, aboard the USS Concordia, Daniel Reyes worked inside the engine room. Sweat dripped down his face as he tightened a bolt on the Titan drive. Carla Moore leaned over his shoulder. "You think this thing will hold up for another jump?" she asked. He wiped his brow. "I hope so," he said. "Because if we don't get there fast, we might not get there at all." Commander Marcus Bell stood nearby, watching the engineers work. He knew this mission wasn't just about speed or power, it was about survival. If they failed, Earth would lose its best chance. He turned to Captain Lisa Harper, who had just arrived on the ship. "You ready?" he asked. She looked calm. Too calm. "I was born ready," she said. "Now let's go punch some aliens in the face." On Earth, General Elizabeth Parker met with the President one last time before launch. "This is it," she said. "If this fails, we may not get another shot." The President didn't look away. "Then make sure it doesn't fail." Outside, cities buzzed with energy. Factories ran non-stop. Ships were loaded with weapons, supplies, and brave men and women willing to fight. This wasn't just a battle anymore, it was a war, and Earth was done playing defense. The UNSC assembled a fleet unlike anything seen before. Old warships, converted freighters, even private ships volunteered for the mission. Every ship that could fly was given a role. Some would distract, some would defend, and a few, only a few, would carry out the final strike. Lisa Harper sat in her fighter, checking systems. Her hands were steady. Her mind was sharp. Behind her, Jake Miller stood with other recruits, watching her prepare. "She's really going, huh?" one of them whispered. Jake nodded. "She is." He looked back at the sky. "So are we all." Back. On the Concordia, Commander Bell gave the final order. "All ships prepare for jump." Lights blinked across the fleet. Every pilot, every crew member held their breath. Daniel Reyes watched the Titan drive flicker. "Here goes nothing," he muttered. Then the drive engaged. Space twisted, stars stretched, and in a flash of light, the fleet vanished. They reappeared. Near the gas giant, the alien command station loomed ahead, massive and dark. It pulsed with red lights. Lines of energy connected it to smaller satellites and dreadnoughts floating like silent hunters. Bell looked at the screen. "That's one ugly son of a gun," he said. Harper smirked. "Let's see how ugly it looks after we shoot it." The attack began fast. Fighters dove into the chaos, firing missiles and dodging enemy fire. Bombers targeted outer defenses. The bigger ships held the line, taking hits to buy time. Reyes worked non-stop in the engine room, rerouting power, fixing systems under fire. Moore shouted over the noise. "How long can we keep this up?" Reyes didn't stop working. "As long as we have to." Outside, explosions lit up the dark. Ships burned, some fell, but others kept coming. And through it all, Earth fought. Not because they were winning yet, but because they refused to lose. Back on Luna Theta, Aaron Price watched the live feed. "Hold on," he whispered. "Just a little longer." In Washington, General Parker stood in front of a world watching and waiting. She didn't speak. She just watched. Waiting to see if humanity had made its biggest gamble and won or lost everything. The battle was loud even in the silence of space. Flashes of fire lit up the dark. Ships twisted and turned like fighters in a sky full of death. Missiles flew. Lasers burned. Explosions bloomed without sound, but they were felt in every heart, aboard every human ship. Captain Lisa Harper dove her fighter through enemy lines. Sweat ran down her face. Her hands gripped the controls tight. "Harper to all wings," she said over comms. "We need to break through that outer shell. Now." Her wingman, a young pilot named Cole, responded first. "We're getting torn apart out here." "I know," she said, "but we don't stop. We push through." They dove low, flying between two dreadnoughts. The alien ships fired, but not fast enough. Harper's team slipped past and came up under the command station's main defenses. Inside the USS Concordia, Daniel Reyes worked like his life depended on it. Because it did. He rerouted power from damaged systems to the main cannon. Sparks flew as he tightened wires by hand. Carla Moore stood beside him, calling out readings. "Shield strength dropping," she shouted. "We've got minutes." Reyes didn't look up. "We just need one shot." Commander Marcus Bell stood on the bridge, watching the chaos unfold. He saw ships fall. He saw brave men and women give everything. But he also saw something else. Hope. He turned to the weapons officer. "Tell me we can hit that core." The officer checked the data. "We can," he said, "but we'll only get one chance." Bell nodded. "That's all we need." Back on Luna, Theta, Lieutenant Aaron Price watched the battle from the observation deck. His fists were clenched. Around him, recruits trained hard, preparing for the next wave. If Earth won today, it wouldn't mean peace, not yet. But it would mean time to breathe, time to fight another day. Jake Miller walked up beside him. "They're really doing it," Jake said. Price didn't take his eyes off the screen. "They are." Jake looked at him. "What if they fail?" Price finally looked at him. "Then we make sure it wasn't for nothing." On the battlefield, Harper led her team into the final push. They flew close to the command station's outer hull. Enemy turrets opened fire. One of her wingmen exploded in a flash of light. She didn't flinch. "Keep going," she shouted. They fired missiles. Lasers cut through armor. The station shuddered, but held. Inside the Concordia, Reyes finished. "The last connection, it's ready," he said. Moore looked at the numbers. "If we fire now, the chain reaction might take us too." Reyes looked at her. "We don't have a choice." Bell gave the order. "Fire." The Concordia's main weapon lit up. A beam of pure energy shot forward, cutting through the void. It struck the station's core dead center. For a second, nothing happened. Then light. A massive explosion tore through the command node. The shockwave rippled outward. Dreadnoughts froze mid-attack. Their weapons powered down. Their movement stopped. One by one, they drifted. Silent. Dead. Across the battlefield, humans stopped firing. They stared. Then someone shouted, "We did it!" Harper let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. "Holy hell," she whispered. "We actually did it." Inside the Concordia, Reyes fell back into his seat. "We're still alive," he said. Moore laughed. "Barely." Back on Earth, General Elizabeth Parker watched the feed in silence. Then she turned to the president. "They made it," she said. "And the dreadnoughts, they're gone." The president closed his eyes. Then the war is over. Outside, across cities and colonies, people heard the news. Some cried, some cheered, some just sat in silence, trying to believe it was real. On Luna Theta, Aaron Price looked at the stars again. Not with fear, but with pride, because Earth had done what no one thought possible. It had fought back, and it had won, at least this time. Somewhere far away, in the cold black of space, pieces of the broken station floated, and in the darkness beyond, something else watched. Something new, waiting. But not for long. The silence that followed was not like before. It wasn't empty. It wasn't afraid. It was calm. Victory had come at a cost. Dozens of ships were lost. Thousands of brave men and women gave their lives. Earth's colonies still bore the scars of war, but the dreadnoughts were gone. Their command station destroyed, the enemy broken. Across the solar system, people looked to the stars, not in fear, but in wonder. On Luna Theta, Lieutenant Aaron Price stood on the observation deck, watching the Earth rise over the moon's edge. He had spent years training soldiers, preparing for a war he hoped would never come. Now it had, and they had won. Beside him, Jake Miller stood quietly, eyes fixed on the planet below. "They really did it," Jake said. Price nodded. "They did." Jake turned to him. "What now?" Price smiled. "We build, we learn, and we get ready." Back on Earth, General Elizabeth Parker stepped out of the war room for the first time in days. The world had changed while she worked inside those cold metal walls. She could see it in the faces of the people outside. They were tired, bruised, but alive. She walked through the streets of Washington, D.C., past banners celebrating the victory. One read, "Earth stands." Another, "We are not alone, but we are not weak." She smiled faintly. This was not the end. It was only the beginning. On board, the USS Concordia, Daniel Reyes sat in the engine room staring at the Titan drive. It had taken them farther than any human had ever gone. It had brought them back. Carla Moore walked up beside him. "You thinking about what's next?" she asked. He nodded. "I keep wondering if we really won," he said. "Or if we just survived long enough to fight something worse." Moore crossed her arms. "That's always been our thing, isn't it? Survive, adapt, fight." Reyes looked at her. "And win." She grinned. "And win." Captain Lisa Harper stood on the flight deck, looking at her fighter. It was damaged, scratched, burned. But it flew. It fought. It came home. A young recruit approached her nervously. "Ma'am," he said, "do you think there will be another war?" She looked at him. "Probably," she said, "but not today." He nodded slowly. "Then what do we do today?" She smiled. "Today we rest. Tomorrow we train harder." Commander Marcus Bell stood alone on the bridge of the Concordia. He watched the stars as the ship drifted near the remains of the alien station. Pieces of it floated silently in space, reminders of what had been. He opened a secure channel to Earth. "This is Commander Bell," he said. "I'm sending back all data from this mission. There's more out there. More than we understand. We need to keep learning." Back in Washington, General Parker listened carefully. "We will," she said. "We're not going to make the same mistake twice." Across Earth and its colonies, life began to return to normal. Cities rebuilt, families reunited, soldiers came home. But things were different now. People talked differently, walked differently, looked at the sky like it meant something. Because it did. They were not alone. And now, they knew how to fight. In the weeks that followed, Earth formed the United Terran Defense Fleet, a new alliance between nations, scientists, and soldiers. The goal was simple: protect humanity, explore the stars, and never again be caught off guard. Daniel Reyes was promoted to lieutenant junior grade and placed in charge of tech development. His work on the Titan drive led to faster jumps, better shields, and smarter weapons. Lisa Harper became a symbol of courage. Her name was taught in schools. Her speeches played on public screens. But she didn't care about fame. She trained pilots. She flew missions. She kept Earth safe. Marcus Bell disappeared into classified projects. Rumors said he was working on something big, something even the president didn't know about. And somewhere far beyond known space, the stars whispered. Not in warning, but in welcome. Earth had been silent for too long. Now it had spoken, and it was ready for whatever came next.